Hello, this is Adam Krieger, founder of Preferred Strategies. I'd like to welcome you today to our webinar, Introduction to Self-Service, Sales and Distribution Reporting and Analytics for JD Edwards. We're going to walk through a handful of slides and then dive into the hands-on portion of the webinar. So the problems we solve, and I think this is what we find working with JD Edwards customers on a daily basis, is that even though we're JD Edwards may be the crux of the source of data for a lot of things, every company has several different other sources of data, right? So whether or not you're running your CRM in the cloud, or you've got multiple ERPs that need to be blended together, or you've got your HR running in a different system than your ERP. So in the long and short of it, there's all kinds of data. And you've got all kinds of users in different communities and different departments and divisions and user communities that need to get access to that data. And so who sits between that? IT. Right? And so that's where we kind of help with this challenge of getting all this data in the hands of all the right users at the right time in the right fashion and format. So that's what we do. So how we solve this problem, we've created a QuickLaunch, which is a accelerator package for JD Edwards ERP that really is tailored for JD Edwards, but the methodologies and best practices we've built into our package can be used against all these other sources or other sources of data as well. So we provide a methodology, not just a JD Edwards only solution. So that's how we fit the gap between growing number of data sources and tying that to the users using market leading BI technologies. So speaking of market-leading BI technologies, this is the Magic Quadrant of Gartner from 2017. And if we look at this, the goal of this, if you're not familiar with Gartner, is to try and be as far up in the upper right-hand corner as possible. So in 2017, which was a shift from 2015, there was several other vendors in the Leaders Quadrant, all the mega vendors, SAP Business Objects, IBM Cognos, Oracle. And from 2015 to 2016, Gartner shifted from a traditional BI, which is really IT involved from end to end, to a business user-led business intelligence and analytics. And that's really what Gartner is evaluating as market leading in the Magic Quadrant, really around business user-focused tools, not IT. Doesn't mean that IT is not involved, but these are more IT enabled and business-led versus IT does everything. So focusing on the leader there, Microsoft Power BI, this is kind of an architecture and includes kind of our QuickLaunch for JD Edwards. So we translate and transform the cryptic JD Edwards data of the 5,000 tables, which ones you need for GL versus sales versus procurement versus inventory. We translate the field. So instead of seeing MCU, you'll see business unit. Instead of seeing, the GBOBJ, you'll see object account. So the field names will be logical. The dates and decimals will be there. We've mapped to your fiscal calendar. So if you're on 445 or 544, we tailor all that in and we relabel everything based on your category code. So you're going to get your JD Edwards data in a much more business-friendly format. We can do write and connect right at the raw transaction JD Edwards data, or we can offload that data and mirror that data to another location and map everything to that. Or we also have a star schema data warehouse if, for whatever reason, you're trying to blend and consolidate multiple ERPs together or tightly integrate several different sources of data into one nicely formatted data store and data model within the database itself. So we've got those on the back end. The key is really we're modeling the data, and that's really would be the governance that users would connect to build out content. And that's in our data models using Microsoft Analysis Services to build those models. And then we have Power BI front-end samples that are on top of that. And also a variety of other front-end tools, other market-leading tools like Tableau could also be connecting to our model. But even Excel and reporting services within the Microsoft suite are great front ends as well beyond Power BI. So when we get into the live demo and demonstration today, what you'll see is all of the Power BI functionality, but you're going to see it tailored for JD Edwards. That's using our QuickLaunch. So all the JD Edwards look and feel is all coming from Preferred Strategies, but all the functionality is all Microsoft. And the last thing is when it really comes down to collaboration and sharing, how are users? How is your CEO going to consume this data? Is it going to be on his desktop, or is he going to be at the airport checking out his KPIs on his mobile device while waiting for his flight? Right. So this is kind of the idea of end-to-end how Microsoft is making this that much easy for companies to consume and use. At the bottom here, you see this data gateway. So that's how we're connecting, regardless of where your data is at. Your JD Edwards data could be on-premise. You could be using Salesforce in the cloud. You could have a variety of different connections to data all over the place. And Microsoft with this gateway is going to allow you to kind of connect all that and interact with that live kind of from a web browser. And that's what we'll show you in demonstration. So we're going to switch gears now and get into the hands-on piece of our time here today. I'm going to start by just logging in to the web portal or the Power BI cloud service, and we'll look at more sales, inventory, purchasing related stuff in this session. We'll start with some dashboards, look at some reports, show you more analyst type ad hoc features as well, and then we'll come back and show you how even from Excel we can connect to the same source of data. Okay. So I'm going to open up in a browser here. And so when you just open up and go in the browser window and go to powerbi.com. So if I go to powerbi.com, you're going to get to a page here. You'll see a sign up for free, right? So if I choose sign up for free, you can go and download the Power BI desktop, the desktop client for free, or you can sign up for a free cloud account. If you're interested in a free trial, we actually can set up a trial out here for you with our sample JD Edwards content in it, so you can get a much better flavor of what it'd be like in a real JD Edwards environment instead of just starting from a blank slate. So if I sign in and choose the sign in here, I can go and specify an account. This would be, you normally authenticate with your email address, and it'd be using your Active Directory credentials on how you'd be able to get access to some data. So I'm gonna log in here. So one of the things that we'll notice here when I log in is we've actually put everything in a My Workspace, but normally within the application there's workspaces. So you can create workspaces for the different types of information. So you might have a sales workspace, you might have a general ledger workspace, you might have an executive workspace, or human resources. So it's however you want to organize content and share and set up restricted users that have access to that different type of content. It would be where you kind of set up the workspaces and set up rights and members to those. Right now, for the sake of this demonstration, we put everything in a My Workspace, but we'll kind of walk through some of the functionality that you'd get. So if I start here, we've got dashboards, right? We can have one or multiple dashboards. We have reports, our data sets. You can also publish some workbooks out here. So if I go to dashboards, I'm going to start with maybe a distribution dashboard. So if I click on that, this might be my at a glance, right? We've included some information from a variety of different elements within this workspace. So some things related to sales, inventory, procurement. Again, you can pin things to a dashboard from the underlying reports, and we can show you how to do that with the click of a button. But the idea would be this might be at a glance, and if I were looking at this on my mobile device, right, you can go ahead and, this is looking at the web view, or if I switch that, is going to go ahead and convert this to this is how it might look like if I actually on my mobile device, right? So you can go ahead and get a sense of how, and you can reorganize this on how you want things to display, whether or not you're in the web or on dialing into the Power BI app from your mobile device. So I'm gonna start from here. I'm gonna drill down to reports. I can see I've got this sales by channel. If I click on that, it's now drilling me down to my underlying report that I've got. This is our out-of-box Power BI sales report. So if I open this up, I'm gonna just do this full screen. You'll notice that I've got a variety of different things. One, I've got some visuals on the report. We'll walk through that. I've also got these what are called slicers in Power BI on the top. So I've got month to date, quarter to date, year to date. I can flip those. So right now I'm looking at my month to date sales, but if I flip it to quarter to date, it's now going to calculate my quarter to date sales or even year to date, right? And I can also switch from period 8 to period 9. So as I'm changing these time slicers, it's recalculating these calculations that we see on the fly. And when we get into edit mode in a few minutes, you'll be able to even get a better understanding of what's there and how those work. So for one, if I want to look at just retail, I mouse over that, it'll give me the value, but I can also left click on that and it'll create, in this case, we've told this visual, when I select something from this chart, I want to filter down my customers, but just highlight my regions. So I can see retail is actually, if I mouse over central, only 683,000 of the $1.6 million in central is retail. Right. So if I wanted to drill into one of these, if you defined in your visual different elements and dimensions for your hierarchy, and we'll show you how to edit this in the fly, we could go in and do that. So if we start with, look at this, and you'll notice right now that on this visual, there's a little drop down arrow. That means that there's a hierarchy defined. So I can left click on that arrow. And now if I just left click on this chart, I can drill down on central. And you'll notice that when I drill down on central, I was actually better than prior year for Robert O'Neill, but Jason Lee was only about half of his sales of the prior year. Let's drill down into Jason Lee and see the breakdown of his customers. So Best Buy, Sears, Target seem to be his big problem points. We can go ahead and drill back up. Right, so that's one way we can go ahead and click. Another way is if we just want to right click on something, if you're a right click person, you can drill down, right? So that's one way. The other option is there's these you can drill all to the next level here. So for instance, right now we have this by region. Instead, our next breakdown was sales rep. So we can see all of our sales broken down by sales rep, right? Or we can go the combination of our region and sales rep. So now we can kind of get the combination of each of those combined. Lots of different options for drill. Again, this is just a quick example looking at our customer sales. Part of our process when we map this is we tailor this to your category codes. So you might have different customer-related CAT codes, address book-related CAT codes for things like either sales reps, regions, channels. So that's all something that we would tailor. If I go to the next tab here, product sales, this would be now we're showcasing an example of how you might be rolling up your sales by more product-related like product families, product groups, product subgroups, and so forth. So just like the other tab, if I want to look at just TV video, I could select that. It's going to highlight to the right. We also can go in and do scatter plots, which are kind of nice because it gives you a different flavor. I can see on one axis I've got gross profit percent, and the other axis I've got sales amount. And if I wanted to see all those so I'm looking at this is my product, I can actually go in here and remove some outliers. So let's say I want to get rid of TV video, I can exclude that from the canvas, right? I can also exclude home appliances as well. And now it's just going to spread the other elements. So if you do have a few kind of outliers that are just skewing your chart and you want to kind of get a better visual of the others, you can go ahead and just exclude those. We can bring those back to the canvas by just going in and opening up the filters and removing that. Now, also, if I want to look at some of this, if I don't always want to look at something visually, I could right-click on something, and if I see data, it's actually going to show me that data in a data table right below the visual. So I can get the real numbers without having to mouse over or try and figure it out by looking at the screen. And if you have given rights to export data, then you can also export all these to like Excel if you wanted to. So that's in a nutshell looking at some sales by customer related CAT codes, by product related CAT codes. Here's another example where inside of the modeling, if you define some fields that are geographic type fields, so whether or not it's state or could be country or could be postal code, it'll actually associate those as geomappings, and so you just drag this into the canvas, it'll know how to render that right into a map for you. Now, looking at this, we've introduced some other elements, some other types of slicers. So at the top, we were looking at these month-to-date, quarter-to-date, year-to-date for different periods in year. But now we've added some dimension slicers. And this is where, within the tool, if I want to look at just Jason Lee, I could select Jason Lee, and it's going to narrow down to just his territory. I can look at just Jason Lee for computing, as an example. And now we're going to see just Jason Lee's computing sales. Right? I can also go in and say, okay, I want to look at maybe mobile, accessories, and home appliances combined. Right? So you can just hold control and just any combination. So you're able to get within one screen lots of different flavors of how the data may roll up. Whereas if you're looking at more of a traditional reporting tool, this might have been a report that was grouped by, state and channel and region and sales revenue. So all of a sudden, this could have been a 100-page report, as an example. Okay. I look at the trends tab. It's also sometimes kind of nice to see how are my sales trending over time. In this case, we've got our year-over-year sales by month. So I can see month by month, June, I'm behind looking at the consolidated, but I could still look, well, that's just online sales, right? So I could filter that. It's now looking at just the online piece of it. Now, look how are we looking quarter to date? So when I do switch it to quarter to date, we're now getting a 1 month, 2 months, 3 months trend, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months trend. Or if I flip on it to year to date, we're now seeing that year to date trend over time. If we wanted to expand one of these full screen, we can go ahead and open up focus mode. It's going to just take this into a full screen mode if you want to focus on one visual at a time. So this is another way to kind of get a quick feel for how are you doing trend related. If I go and look at key sales metrics, here we've got some sample KPIs for things like gross profit dollars, percentages, sales dollars. You can also do things like on time in full and other types of key metrics that are important for your business to monitor performance. So we can go back in time and say, okay, well, how was I doing back period 5, right? So if I go back to period 5, it'll recalculate. If I want to look at just other as an example, right? We can kind of get a sense of, which ones might be more problematic than others. So in some case, you'll see in this one, we've got gross profit, we've got, sales, where sometimes the year to date or month to date, is doing fine, but year to date is actually, it's actually my quarter date is doing good, but my month to date and my year to date are not. And so you can set up goals and targets. So in this case, we're just comparing year over year, but if you had some type of budget or target out there, that could be brought in. If you have 2 different targets, if you're better than both of your targets, then KPIs will show up as green. If you're worse than both targets, they'll be red. And if you're in between 2 targets, they would be yellow. So this is another way to kind of get a quick feel for, how people are doing. And if I go and look at Jason Lee, right, as we might have expected, he's not doing so hot. At the end of the day, there's also sometimes where customers I just want to get a list of data, right? I still want a list report. Here's an example where we put our different product groups as our columns, our region and customers as our rows. And so that's, and then we can still add filters here. So I can still go in and say, well, let's look at, maybe just still our retail sales, right? It's going to filter that data set based on those. Okay, and these can also be drillable as well. So just like the charts were drillable, these can also be. So I'm going to hit escape on here for a second. Now, if I'm looking at this, right now we've been more of a consumer. I'm walking through what can I do as a user, analyzing data in a report that's already I've been granted rights to, and what I can just click and do. But there's also going to be the idea of analysts and authors who might want to make a change. So in that scenario, if I have been given rights to edit reports, there'll be an edit report will be open. If I'm a view-only user, this will be grayed out. I wouldn't be able to edit this. If I go ahead and choose edit report, you're going to notice a few things. So for one is if I select this visual, you'll notice we've got some visualizations, we've got some elements we can change. We've got also a list of fields. So these list of fields is already with our QuickLaunch, we've defined for JD Edwards sales what are these most used fields and calculations already there based on, again, if I open up sales, we're going to see things like, and this blends together. We blend in our model the open orders on the 4211 and the 42119 for the history. So you can get one view across both of those blended together. We open up sales amount. We can see we've got sales amount. We've got month to date, quarter to date, year to date, total year. Same thing for prior year. So you can get that year over year analysis by month or quarter to date or year to date right there on the fly. And this is all based on your fiscal calendar. And these can also be based off your business days. So if you use for your sales business day logic, when we build out our calendar on top of how you're defining your JD Edwards data, based on 445, 544, whatever, then we can take all that into effect on how these calculate. Okay, but also you'll notice that there's sales information. We've got different type of customers sold to, parents, shipped to, right? We've got item branch, so lot, order status, subledger, work order. Had I gone and grabbed inventory or purchasing, I would have seen some of these shared dimensions, like item branch maybe, but I wouldn't have seen all of the same, elements. So that's where we model the data. So if you're building a specific type of report, only the related elements that you need are already defined for you to grab and drag and drop. So if we start with this visual, and I want to turn this visual into maybe a donut chart, right? Well, before I make a change to this tab, I can also go in and duplicate the page. So I can either modify an existing page, or I can right-click on a tab and duplicate page. And now I can select this visual, and I'll turn that into maybe a donut, right? Or maybe I want to see that as an area map, or maybe a bar chart. So this would be where you can just, by selecting the different visuals, it's changing what you see on the screen. We can easily go in here and resort this, right? Right now, this is going to drill down from the product subgroup to the item. So when I drill down on televisions, it's going to drill down on televisions down to the SKU. But we could go in here and say, you know what, I want to start this drill maybe by channel. So if I go to our customer and grab our channel, I can bring that up above our subgroup, and now we're going to start with our channel, drill down from a channel down to the product subgroup. Okay. Now we could have started the subgroup then to the channel, so we just grab that, move it up in and that just defines our drill hierarchy. So by users just dragging the different dimensions they want, are defining the drill path on the fly. So that's kind of how easily a user can make a change. Okay. The other thing, so we've modified and just duplicated this tab, but there might be sometimes when you want to go in and just create a whole new tab with an existing report. So if I hit new page here, let's say that we want to look at our year-to-date, year-over-year sales by product group. So if I were to go down to our sales, and I'll find our sales amount, and I'll get our year-to-date sales amount versus our prior year-to-date. And I'm going to select item group or product group, so I can bring that into the mix. So right there, within a few clicks, we have our year-to-date sales year-over-year by product group. And if we want to go to hit the format brush here, we can add some data labels. There's lots of other formatting options we can do here. But if I wanted to now control this by the user changing, like we saw the others, the period and year, we could copy those slices from the other tab, or I could even just drag them in. So if I go to the calendar and bring our year into the canvas here, so I'll bring our year and turn that into a slicer. So now we can look at just 2019. I can go and bring our period number into the canvas and click on a slicer there. And now I could go and pick our period 5, right, period 6. So by just changing the period and year, that's the dynamic nature that's built into our QuickLaunch model, is we've already defined these type of calculations. Now, let's say right next to this, I wanted a Control-C, Control-V. I'm going to copy and paste this. Maybe I want to get a breakdown by sales rep. So if I go back to our customer, in this case, might be a customer cat code or product, address cat code. I could bring sales rep in above product group, and maybe I want to see this as a donut instead of a bar chart, right? Instead of seeing both my current year to date and prior year to date in the chart, I can bring prior year down as a tooltip. So now you'll see that my prior year is now showing up on a tooltip. Now let's say I want gross profit percent year to date in there as well. So we go down to our sales, go to our gross profit, and I could easily grab gross profit per year to date, bring that down, and even my percent year to date, and bring that into the canvas as well. So now when I mouse over that, you'll see that we're showing those other pieces of information, right? So we have that. Now let's say we also want to see our sales trended at the bottom. So if we go ahead and click on a bar chart again, right? So let's say I want this by our year and period. So if I go to our calendar, and I'll bring in our year period into the mix. Oops. Let me drag that onto here. Okay, and let's go ahead and bring in maybe our gross profit dollars. So if I bring in our gross profit, and I'll bring in our, okay, and then maybe we want to see that trended over time. Now you notice right now, as I choose our different periods, I'm filtering down this chart based on the period filter. So this is where we can go in and change what we want, how we want things to interact. When I select something from this, I don't want it to impact my trend chart, right? So now when I click on any of these, it's not going to affect my trend. I can still go down here and add some data labels as well. Okay. Now let's say, just to kind of give a different flavor, maybe that wants to be. So quickly, if I look at, let's say, Robert O'Neill, right, we can have that, highlight these, or I can turn these into filters. So I can have, okay, when I select this chart, I want to highlight the product groups on the left. So Jennifer Alvarez, what are her products? So it can highlight the total on the bottom and then, filter the other. So that's in a nutshell how you can build a quick ad hoc tab. If I wanted to save this report, I could save this report, or I could do a file, save as, and save this as a new report. Maybe a sales ad hoc report. Okay. Now you'll notice when I hit the file, there's also an option I can export this to PowerPoint. So if I want to turn this into a PowerPoint deck to present to the board, I could do that very easily. Now, the other thing we could do is, if I want to pin one of these to a dashboard, let's say I want this trend chart on my dashboard, I can go ahead and hit the little pin icon. It's now going to pin that visual to the distribution dashboard, or I can create a new one. Okay. So now if I go back to my dashboard and go to distribution dashboard, you'll notice at the bottom there is that new element that we just had pinned there. Okay. So we started from a dashboard, drilled down to report, went through the report, then turned on some ad hoc functionality and analyzed some data. But we can go directly to another report. So in each of these modules, we're providing you already an out-of-box. So if I want to look at maybe my open purchase orders, I can click on purchase order detail and get a one tab. We've got a data table at the bottom. Here's our amount ordered by branch. Here's our open amount by status code. Here's our open amount by supplier, and so on. So we could quickly get a flavor of that. We could edit the report if we wanted to. So that's how you can go directly to report. Or you can also, if you want to build a new report on the fly, let's say I want to look at maybe my top 10 suppliers with open amount, right? I want to start from scratch, not from the existing report that we just looked at. So from the data set, I could click on purchase order detail, and now it's going to open up and give me all the elements around purchasing that I might need to go and drag and drop into the canvas. So I open up supplier, I'll bring supplier name into the canvas, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my purchase order detail, grab my open amount, and then I'm going to turn that into a bar chart. Okay, so we've got lots of different suppliers here. Let's take a look and just sort those high to low, but I still want just the top 10. So if I want a top 10, I can go, while that visual is selected, go down here to the filters, go and grab, top N, maybe top 10, and I grab my open amount, drag that to my value, and then apply filter. So I could have also done my top 10 based on my ordered amount, even though I'm displaying my open amount. Lots of flexibility on what you could do. Again, we can go in here and add data labels. So this might be the question I wanted to answer, or maybe this is now a report that I want to save out there for other people to go ahead and log in. So you can start from a dashboard, build a report. You could start from an existing report and then duplicate a page or modify the report, or you can go right to the data set, create your content, and save the report. Okay, now one thing to point out is every click that I'm doing here, it's kind of querying my data and coming back. So if my data, all my JD Edwards data was sitting on premise or in the cloud, and my BI server is getting that refresh data and storing it in memory for me to slice and dice this data, every click I'm reconnecting to that data set. So that's where that data gateway allows you to connect to your data wherever it's at. So for the sake of time here, I wanted to show a couple other examples, maybe outside of the Power BI, because we also want to show you Excel. So I'm going to open up a spreadsheet here. So if I were to open a spreadsheet, just a raw Excel, and I want to connect to some data, and this is the beauty of the model in that the the Power BI is all running on top of our governed data model. That's again storing everything in memory. It's why it's kind of some customers call it, lightning fast. Is because we've done all that work, and so we connect to that. So if I pull in gross profit into Power BI, or I pull gross profit into the pivot table in Excel from the same model, I know that my numbers are going to be accurate. And that's the challenge with Excel if you're using it, exporting data from, let's say, a JD Edwards report and massaging in Excel. We can cut all that out by keeping this central, single source of truth with the governed data model of QuickLaunch and Microsoft. So if I select, let's say I want to do a quick pivot table, what's my quantity on hand and maybe my value at cost. So if I select a cell in Excel, go to data, get data, and use from database from analysis services. And now I can specify SQL demo. And I can grab a model. We do separate our, the tabular model, one for HR payroll, and then all the other modules we support are in one other data model, or consider it kind of like a cube, so to speak. So if I wanted to go and grab, let's say, the inventory snapshot to get a quick inventory on hand, I can go ahead and grab that and hit finish. And now we can go ahead and see I'm creating a dynamic pivot table to that model. Okay, so in this case, we can go in and say, let's look at our item branch, go bring our item and description in as our rows. We can go up to our measures at the top here and say, okay, let's look at quantity on hand. That gives us our quantity based on each item. What's our value at cost? Okay, and then we can also go and say, well, let's see that by branch. All right, so this is where we can go in and grab our branch, bring that above our item. Okay, and we could also go in and say, okay, well, I also want to filter this down based on some type of slicer. So we can go to branch company, maybe add that as a slicer. And this is where we can go in and have this slicer, kind of like we're showing in Power BI, control the chart on the right. Okay, we can go in here and we can collapse these. So if you're an Excel person and you want to build dynamic pivot tables right against that model, now keep in mind that every time I expand or do or click on anything, it's requerying the model back and forth, right? And so that model is constantly being refreshed with data. So from one click to the next, if that model just got refreshed with data, I'm now seeing that most recent data on my screen. And if we need to enforce any type of row security or company security, business unit security, or even row security outside of JD Edwards, you can support all of that. So right next to this, right, we can go to another tab and still, like we did before, look at what are, again, our open POs by supplier. Like we just did the other one, we want that in Excel, right? So right this, I can go data, get data, analysis services, choose, right? Grab the model, grab purchase order detail, hit finish. So now we have, what's open, what's ordered. So again, we just go drag and drop into the canvas. So and again, I can go back and make changes over time. So I go back to the other one. Here's that pivot table. I go to this pivot table. So that's kind of Excel, again, using the same governed model that we're doing in Power BI. So I think give a kind of out of time. So I'm going to finalize some PowerPoint slides, and then we'll open up for questions. And so back to some customer scenarios here. We just did a presentation with Man Packing at the Infocus 2017 conference in Denver. And we mentioned Man Packing in our last financial webinar we just completed. But not only is the CFO building his own Power BI reports and dashboards, and the board's using that as their monitoring tool for performance on a monthly basis, but their whole sales reps, right? They're all using Power BI to get at all their sales data, sitting down with meetings with customers, as well as just analyzing the data. Now, where IT used to build all reports, that's all been shifted into the business. So liaisons in sales are building their own reports. Some people who have been given the rights to edit reports can author their own reports. But according to Man, it takes about 10 minutes to train their sales staff. So this has been a huge transition for them, getting reporting and analytics outside of the hands of IT. Now, IT still helps enable the business, but the business is building their own reports and content. These are the modules we support. So the full, financials, general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, sales, inventory, procurement, manufacturing, job cost, contract billing, asset management, HR payroll, transportation, property management. And then as far as our ability to implement and timeline, we spent thousands of hours building out this content with our domain knowledge of JD Edwards and our expertise around BI and market-leading BI and Microsoft. And so we're able to take what we've done with all this work and get up and running in a matter of days, and then going back and forth, getting everything kind of polished within a matter of a few weeks. You're then ready to go to meet all your long-term objectives and requirements. So once again, I want to thank you for attending our webinar today, and we look forward to following up with you in the future.